Welcome to everybody that's joined us on this Wednesday afternoon. My name is Ken Annandale. I'm going to be taking you through a relatively short presentation that looks specifically at occupational health and safety and the training of people in safety. We're also going to look at some aspects relating to QCTO, to SETA, to NQF and stuff like that. We're also going to be talking about legislation and where it's at and where it's going. Now, all of that is quite a compact message, so I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to do a screen share, and I'm going to record the entire thing so that you can watch it afterwards, and or you can have your colleagues and associates watch it as well. I'm going to kick off by just asking Natalie to introduce herself very, very quickly so that you know what her role is. And then hopefully Penny will be joining us. Penny's my partner, and she'll be joining us. Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see. She's busy with something else. Natalie, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Natalie, and I'm the Customer Relations Manager for Intra. So I'm usually your first point of contact on your journey to becoming a licensee. I'm your go-to for any initial questions you might have, any meetings you want to set up, any resources that are mentioned that you need. I'm your girl for that. So during the presentation today, my details will be shared. And if you're watching the recording, you're welcome to just pop me a WhatsApp message or an email, and we hope you enjoy it. Thanks for being here.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks, Natalie, appreciate that. Natalie and I, obviously, we're family, so we talk a lot, and she's been really beneficial to the company, and I am honestly grateful that she's in our life. All right, okay, having said that, Natalie, I just need to make sure that I can't be seen. I'm just going to eliminate the screen, but we've got about 15 or 16 people. Oh, no, we've got more. We've got 26 people that have joined us today. And it means that obviously you have questions and you want answers with regards what's going on in the health and safety training world. But also you probably want some answers and you want some ideas in terms of starting a business. So I'm going to kick this off by just repeating what the invitation said to you. The invitation said something along the lines of become a legal compliance health and safety training provider. And with that in mind, we know for a fact that it is quite possible to set up a business in South Africa where you could become a training provider. However, in the midst of all of that, there are rules and regulations and there's standards and policies, and there are things that you need to know. And we'll be talking about some of them now. And for those of you that want to embark on the journey with us, we'll be talking about them a lot. I want to just kick off by saying that in South Africa, we have something like 16.6 million employees. About 600,000 of those work in the mines, and the remaining 16 million people either work for organizations or employers or are self-employed. And as far as the legislation is concerned, we know that the legislation requires that every single person receive some sort of information or instruction or training when it comes to occupational health and safety. Unfortunately, we don't have time to share and do story in detail, but I'm hoping to be able to share his story in one of the webinars that we have in the near future. And that's the kind of story that we all need to hear. Du's story in a nutshell is that he was a victim of an incident. However, he has pulled himself through after the explosion and having 70% of his body burnt. He pulled himself through, and no longer is he a victim, but he is now a victor. And he trains and teaches people about attitudes and procedures and activities and things like that. Okay, so enough of that. I think we've let everybody in, so let's get straight into it. We all know in South Africa that the primary piece of legislation that we have to comply with is the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And we know that that piece of legislation is about 30 years old. We also know that there's been talk over the last decade or so of the Department of Employment and Labour actually amending this legislation. And there's quite a lot of talk around the amendment bill. Some of you might be familiar with that term, and we'll be talking a lot about that in the near future. Now, this legislation is criminal legislation. It means, and it's self-regulatory criminal legislation. It means that every single employee has to comply with the law, and if they don't, they could land up literally in jail. I have a favorite saying that says, our job is to keep employers out of jail and to keep employees out of hospital. And as a participant in the entire health and safety world, we know that that is a critical thing. Now, health and safety is not necessarily the most popular term or topic under the sun, but we know how important it is. And I'm going to be touching on some of those things. We know we've got the Act, it's got 50 sections. And in the Act, we know that it references regulations, and there are countless regulations. I think it's about 22 regulations all told. And the question that I ask people is, have you read the Act? Have you actually taken some time and attended a workshop on it? And if so, how much of that do you still remember? And are you familiar with the requirements of the legislation? Then, moving on, have you read the regulations? And do you know which of these regulations actually apply to you? And if this is a checklist, which ones there apply to you? I'm going to just ask you to take a look at that screen. And I'm going to ask you, do you and are you and all your clients, are they involved with the use of asbestos? Or involved as engineers with the certificate of competency? Or commercial diving or construction or driven machinery? Do you or your client or your learners, are they involved in electrical installations and electrical machinery? Or the environmental regulations for workplace? Now, that's not the environment as in sustainability and climate change. This is the environment in which the person works. Or explosives, or facilities for workplaces. Then, of course, are you or your clients or your learners involved in terms of health and safety representatives and the general administrative regulation, or the general machinery regulation, or the general safety regulation for first aid and many other aspects, or hazardous biological substances or chemical substances? And do you or are you or your client involved in having children at work? Now, that's a regulation which many people have never read. Or alternatively, pressure equipment. How about lifts and elevators and passenger conveyors, or major hazard installation, or 3 draft regulations that are going to be coming through: noise, physical agents, and lead? Wow. And as you look at this, you can see that there's a host of other regulations which we could add on, such as the ergonomics regulation. So these are things that you and I, if we're going to be trainers, or we're already health and safety professionals and practitioners, we should be on top of all of these regulations. So if somebody asks a question, we'll know where to get the answer. Okay, that's one of the roles that we play, is to provide the information and training so that people can operate effectively around legislation. I want to pull out just 1 or 2 sections of the legislation, Section 8 and Section 13. And I'm sure you all know that Section 8 is the duties of the employer. And it says that the employer must, and it talks about hazards. The employer shall establish which hazards are attached to the work performed, article or substance produced, processed, used, handled, stored, transported, or any plant or machinery used. So that we will call HIRA. The employer shall establish. Now, here's a question which I ask is, how many people do you know that have actually attended a formal HIRA course, a hazard identification and risk assessment course, or a recent one? Okay, then it says, almost like step 2, once the hazards have been identified, the employer must identify the precautionary measures and establish these precautionary measures. And then step 1 was hazards, step 2 is precautionary measures, and then step 3 would be, then the employer shall provide information, instruction, training, and supervision. I'll come back to that. That's as simple as that. The legislation is very clear when it says every employee. I want to move on. I also want to highlight these 4 words: information, instruction, training, and supervision. Now, if we landed up in court and I asked for evidence that you and or your employer and you and or your learners had received all the necessary information, instruction, training, and supervision, would you be able to stand in court and say, yes, Your Honor, here it is, I can prove it to you? And I'll show you where in the legislation it actually says you must do that. How many of you are actually running information sessions or providing the necessary instructions or providing the necessary training? And what's the difference between information, instruction, and training? And these are questions which we may, at some other stage, have to answer in court. Now, we saw there in Section 8, it all starts off, it kicks off with identify the hazards. We call that HIRA. So what I've done is I've drawn up a short list of possible hazards in a workplace. And it says that for each of these, where it is relevant, the employer must provide information, instruction, training, and supervision. And now immediately we go, oh my gosh, I haven't done that. I haven't done all of those things. I've done some of them. For instance, I find a lot of people have still not even read the hazardous biological agents or chemical agents regulation. They don't know about it, which is crazy. I mean, it's legislation, and we know that we operate by the rule of law or under the rule of law, which means if it's written, you do it. Simple as that. No debate. You just do it. Then, of course, there are more aspects, dangers, hazards, and risks in construction or contractors. Disaster management, and electricity and environmental sustainability, and ergonomics. We'll come back to that one in a moment. Then fire, food safety, human resources, and all the issues that go around that. And it's a question which I asked at the conference on Friday before last in Cape Town at the Saiosh conference. The question was, how many of you have actually attended a labor relations and understood the intricacies that go hand in hand with labor relations and occupational health and safety? And then, of course, plant and machinery and tools and equipment and things of that nature. See, all of these present dangers, hazards, or risks to a greater or lesser degree, and we need to find out if they exist. And if they do exist, we must write precautionary measures. And if the precautionary measures have been written, we need to make sure that either you, the trainer, and or the training provider actually integrates those precautionary measures into the training. And we can carry on, and I'm sure that I could use AI and come up with a longer list, but it's enough for now. It's enough to say dangers, hazards, and risks, identify them. Then secondly, write the precautionary measures. Then thirdly, take those precautionary measures and integrate those precautionary measures directly into your information, instruction, and training. Okay, then it carries on. Section 30, now I'm sure you know this one. It says there, as far as reasonably practicable, the employer shall cause every employee to be made conversant. Now, please notice, it says every. Remember, my very first slide said 16 million people. It doesn't say some. It says every or all. Every employee must be made conversant with the hazards to his or her health and safety attached to any work that he has, as well as those precautionary measures to be taken. This is an extract straight out of section 13. So you can see. Now, I want to say this, and it's a bit of a challenge. I've been in the health and safety training world for over 35 years. I started a company called INTRA-SAFE. And INTRA-SAFE was, if not the first, one of the first health and safety training companies in South Africa. I worked for NOSA for a couple of years. I come out of a law enforcement environment. And as a result of that, I enjoy legislation. I like reading it and understanding it and seeing what it says and tells me what I must do. Now, that posed a problem when I started running training programs. I did not go to the client and ask the client for a list of their dangers, hazards, and risks. I did not write those dangers, hazards, and risks into the training I was going to provide. I didn't ask them for their precautionary measures that they stepped in. I used what I would regard at that stage as experience and common sense, but it did not comply with the law. And as we read the law, we know that the law is black and white. It's not difficult. Okay, so having said that, what if we don't do it? Now, that's a slide there that you can have a look at. But the first thing that I want to look at is, look at this is section D, 1D, where I said, can you prove that you've done information, instruction, training, and supervision? Can you prove it? Have you left records behind saying, these are the people, this is what they attended, this is the course content, this is the methodology, these were all the demonstrations and activities that we had? Because look at D, it says, in any person who in any record, application, statement, or other document referred to in this act willfully furnishes information or makes a statement which is false in any materials respect shall be guilty of an offense, blah, 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 blah. Okay, there it is. And then it threatens us with a 50,000 Rand fine. Now, do you know, with the draft bill, this draft bill, the amendment bill that they're talking about, the fines go up from 50,000 to 5 million Rand per offense. Let me say that again. This is important. This is really important. We need to grab this message and we need to share it with as many employers and employees as possible. People can be fined millions if and when the legislation comes through. And according to the Inspector General, who was at the conference 2 weeks ago, she was saying that this bill, if I understand what she said correctly, is currently on the president's table. Now, I don't personally like scaring people with legislation. I just like informing them and educating them and so forth. So we can see on the one hand, we've got the legislation, and we know that the Department of Employment and Labor manages that legislation, or it controls it. And we can see that we have to do this. It's not an option. And we also know and understand a couple of principles in terms of law, where they talk about the reasonable man. Come back to that one. Now, it then carries on and it talks about this legislation, and you'll find reference all over the place to the word competency. Now, this is a very misunderstood word, and I reckon that there's a lot of misinformation in the occupational health and safety world, where people think they know but don't actually know. And they go, I heard somebody say this the other day, every training course has to be accredited. I go, really? Who said so? But we'll come back to that. Let's just quickly touch on some of these basic principles as we laying the foundation. There is a definition for competency, and that definition comes out of the legislation first and foremost. Secondly, you're going to find this competency or term competency comes up under SAQA or from and with SAQA. But let's just look at the legislation in the meantime. I'm sure you can read that. I'm hoping you can read it. It should be nice and big. And you find it in those regulations. Some of those regulations do not apply to you. Just have a look at that list and ask the question, which do apply to you? Are you involved with asbestos, commercial diving, ergonomics as a risk assessor, not just ordinary ergonomics, or first aid, and then hazardous biological and chemical agents, and lifting and driven machinery, and major hazard installations, and working at heights? So somebody asked me the question the other day, said, what do you mean major hazard installation? I said to him, my friend, you've been in the health and safety world for probably 15 years. You mean you've never read it? There's a piece of legislation there that we need to know. Now, first thing is, does it apply to me? If it doesn't apply to me, hallelujah, I don't have to do anything about it. But if it does apply to me, then I do need to do something about it. And this is one of the joys that I have, is sharing this information with people. The next thing that happens is that people will say, well, okay, but it must be accredited, as I said just now. And that's because clients ask, is it accredited? I'm sure you heard the story about the elephant in the room. And if you haven't, just Google it. There's a lovely little story about an elephant in the room where somebody was in a museum and they said, how do you like the museum? They went, fantastic. And the person asking the question said, and what do you think about the elephant in the room? And the person said, I don't know if there was an elephant. I didn't see an elephant. The truth is that we're blinded to certain things. And when we look at legislation, we're sometimes blinded to it. We don't know it's there, or we didn't read it, or it hasn't come up. So the elephant in the room is accreditation. We'll be talking about that extensively for those of you that join us. Come on this journey with us. We'll unpack that for you. Okay. Now, knowing and understand these words as I lay the foundations, what's the difference between accreditation and alignment and approval and certification? And what's the difference between competency and compliance, or registration and verification? Because I often hear people saying things which just tells me that they need a little bit of guidance. They don't know what they're talking about. So we were talking to somebody some time ago, and he was talking about an accredited plumber. And I went, in terms of what legislation is accreditation required for as a plumber? And this morning, Natalie and Penny and I had a discussion around conveying dangerous goods. And must the driver of the vehicle be declared competent? Now, I'm saying, do what you must, do what is logical, but is it in the law? Okay, more about that at a later stage. I want to just quickly take this thing of compliance and just talk it through with you, because the law isn't perfect by any means. And you and I need to know and understand it. For one, we know that there's an ergonomics regulation, and that came out in December of the year 2000, and when was COVID? It was essentially a couple of months before COVID. Ergonomics regulation came out. It says in the ergonomics regulation that all employees, mandatories of persons other than employees, must attend training prior to the placement of the employer, and the employer must make sure that refresher training is conducted. And this continues and talks about designers, manufacturers, importers, and suppliers of goods and services where ergonomics is a factor. Okay, so there it is. And you can have a look at that. I think it's regulation 3 or 4. Take a look at that. But here's the problem. Never did they ever write a SAQA unit standard for ergonomics training. There is an ergonomics unit standard for ergonomic risk assessors, but that's not for every day. Remember, we've got 16 million people that need to be trained It says all 16 million employees, mandatories, or persons. You get the point. Now, just from a business point of view, I go, hallelujah. That's a wonderful business opportunity. Goodness gracious me. It means that I can actually serve on an ongoing basis and then bring people up to speed with regards to ergonomics. Now, I just want to add on to this that currently there is no QCTO curriculum under development that we're aware of. And Penny and I have served on and Penny still serves on a QCTO HWC work group developing curriculum. So you go, well, now what? Well, if there's no unit standard, if there's no curriculum, and the law says training must be done, what do we do? Well, I'll tell you what we do. We do legal compliance training. Simple as that. The law said so, so do it. Don't argue about it. Just do it. Do the training. And if you think of all the people that you know that have never ever attended a ergonomics course or should have attended an ergonomics course, myself included. I won't belabor my story, but I broke my back about 2.5 years ago as a result of a lifting, moving, twisting, standing, pulling, pushing kind of activity. And I was in bed for 2 years. So it was a hang of a thing as a result of not following logical ergonomic activities, and of course, also abusing my body. Now, okay, so I've laid some of the foundations over there, and we know that the legislation is criminal legislation, and you could land up in court. So if you want to land up in court, you're going to have a defense lawyer, or you're going to have a defense and defend yourself. And of course, there's going to be a prosecutor, and the entire process is called the prosecutorial process, where you could ultimately be jailed as at the worst, or fined, and certainly get a criminal record. Okay, fine, that we understand that. Self-regulatory, we need to do that. However, what we have seen over the past decade or two is the advent of SAQA, SETA, QCTO, NQF credits, and all of those sorts of things. Now, it's important to note that SAQA is not criminal legislation. You can't get fined for not following the SAQA system, except in a tiny handful of instances, such as those regulations where the regulation demands competency and the regulation makes a reference to the NQF Act, National Qualification Framework Act. Then, those of you that are familiar with this story, you'll know that a couple of years ago, they turned around and they said, right, we're going to move away from SETA to QCTO. And that decision was taken in Parliament. And they started moving all the unit standards across to the QCTO. And I will just quickly go through this. You may or may not know this, but we had about 11,000 unit standards in South Africa. They then declared that these unit standards, QCTO qualifications, would expire. And they said, what's the difference between a standard and a qualification? Two different work systems. SETA on the one hand has unit standards, QCTO is qualification. Now, we do know, as a result of an outcry, and there's been a massive outcry in the marketplace, that they've extended some of these unit standards. So hallelujah to that. And Anna-Marie, hallelujah to that. That's actually good news. Then they extended some of the QCTO qualifications as well, which is great. But they're not going to develop any new unit standards, none whatsoever. They will, however, develop QCTO qualifications, part qualifications, or skills programs. Okay, so now there's a little bit of a foundation there. Let's talk about accreditation for a moment. So they, at the same time, in June of 2023, they said all expired accredited training providers, SDPs, that's the word I was looking for, the acronym, will stop running courses. You may not run courses if it's expired. You go, well, what do I do? They said, well, if your accreditation is not expired, then you can run courses until such time as it expires. So that's a bit confusing for people such as our organization. We're accredited with the FP&M SETA. And this month, September, ours expires, which means they're not going to extend it. And for us to move ahead, if we were to go and run training courses, we'd have to go to the QCTO. But, and here comes the big but, we can't. So I'll explain why. Now we know that no new accreditations will take place from SETA. We also know that accreditation with the QCTO for the short courses, the 1, 2, and 3 day courses, these micro courses, cannot take place at this stage until they write curriculum. They call them codes. And so far, the QCTO has only published 3. And those 3 are the 3 first aid courses. And until such time as the other QCTO curriculum are published, we can't get accreditation for them. So it's kind of like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Anna Marie, I said to you that I've got some good news for you. And the good news is that there are 12 curriculum that is being written, with another 8 that I heard of today that are being written. But I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so what do? This is a simple guideline. We do legal compliance training, because you can't rely on SETA if we're new and we want to go that route. You can't get your accreditation. And we can't rely on QCTO if you're new and there's no curriculum or codes. So it's kind of like there's a gap. And we are endeavoring to fill that gap. And there is a simple answer. We do legal compliance training. Okay, I think I've got this message through quite clearly. Legal compliance training. Remember, if it's written, it's written. And please, Mr. Tibozana, the former chief inspector, said something which I think is very profound. I actually spoke to him last week. He said, don't write it into the law. Don't make it up. Don't stand next to the braai with your brother-in-law and hear what he has to say and then just take it as law. Your brother-in-law might be a very, very nice guy and quite knowledgeable, unless he is a lawmaker himself and sits in parliament and or is an advocate and or an attorney. Then his input is interesting and speculative, but not legally binding. Just bear that in mind. Okay, so what do we do? With that as the foundation, you can see there's a challenge. So what we did is we took our business model, which we developed a long time ago, and we created a license, a new license. And the new license is called the starter license. And Natalie will provide you with more information in that prospectus document. She'll send it to you. And the actual business model, if you see all the golden shapes there, I'm just trying to think, what is that shape? Those all fall under the starter license. The white ones do not. So once we establish that, and we've done this specifically so we can address some of the challenges that we've got in terms of the SAQA, SETA, QCTO, NQF thing. Okay, then we have a look at the licenses themselves. And I'm going to ask Natalie just to quickly read through these for the starter license. It's the basic. And she'll just touch on them, and then she'll provide you with a lot more information in writing if it interests you. Natalie, you there?
Yeah. So the starter package is ideal for training providers who want to perhaps build towards the full license. They're just getting started on their journey to becoming a training provider, and they maybe don't have as much of the capital. So this is a great place to start, hence the name. You can select any 6 INTRA training materials. You can have one trainer that will attend 6 of the e-learning courses that are similar to the training materials that you would have selected. You also have the option to resell any of the e-learning courses to earn 50% profit. You can attend our 2-day online Train the INTRA Trainer course, which is great for presentation skills and really enhancing your abilities as a trainer. You have the right to co-brand and use our logo. You have the right to modify the material, and you have the right to reproduce unlimited learner materials. The right to reproduce a facilitator material is not included. And the starter fee can be deducted from the upfront fee for the Prime license when you're ready for that. And there's no monthly subscription fee attached to this package.
There we go. Natalie, thank you so much. So you saw the problems that we've got in the marketplace, or I'd like to couch it like this. You see all the opportunities we've got, 16 million people, all these people that need to be trained. And you could either personally and or through your organization set up a training organization that can actually address these needs. Maybe you're a trainer within a corporation, and that's perfect. We'll assist you with that as well. We have a number of people a number of clients that are corporate licensees. Okay. Then the moment we meet you and talk to you, we take you through a business model, explain it to you, do orientation for you, and all of that is in that documentation, which Natalie will send you if you haven't received yet. Then we talk about the prime license, and Natalie will just talk through that quickly.
Okay, so for the prime license, you are able to, as we mentioned, deduct the starter license. And sorry, Dad, there's just a knock on the door here. Can you take over for me quickly?
Okay, not a problem at all.
Sorry about that.
Of course, we can do that. All right. So the prime
Thanks.
license is exactly what it says. It's the prime license. And everything that you saw in the starter license is part of the prime license. We're going to give you the pricings just now so that you can understand how it all works. But the most important thing is that you want to get up and running as a training provider. When I started my company, I had zero assistance. There wasn't even computers on desks. It's that long ago, and that shows how old I am. But now we're saying we'll provide you with the support and the infrastructure. We'll equip you. We'll guide you. There'll be ongoing training and so forth. We've got training material. And of course, as and when new training material comes out, Anna Marie, we said that there's going to be, looks like 18 new training programs coming out from UCO. Then, of course, with the Prime, we really welcome at least 2 people from your organization to attend the e-learning program, largely as an orientation process so they can familiarize themselves with the content. We have a certificate called the HASMAN. Once you've completed all the e-learning programs, you submit your request to us, and we provide you with a health and safety management certificate. We also encourage people to get their own accreditation. We'll teach you how to get your own accreditation. And that is a really, really important thing. We've just reduced it to a shorter version instead of 6 sessions. We've reduced it. Each session is longer and we have fewer sessions. So just bear in mind that's going to change slightly. Then, of course, there's the intra-trainer. And Natalie was talking about the fact that it's presentation skills and communication skills, but also we also deal with sales and marketing and advertising and promotions. We deal with things that are relevant to you as a business owner, setting up your business and so forth. I've been doing this for 35 years, so I've got a bit of experience. Penny has actually been in small business longer than I have, and she's incredibly well versed in running a small business, and we'll share that with you. Then, of course, we've also got a staggered payment system, which you can chat to Natalie about. So if the payments are a little bit too harsh on your cash flow, talk to you about it. There is a monthly subscription fee which will apply. However, at this stage, you would not get the rights to reproduce the copyright or the intellectual property. And we'll explain that in a short while. That's only available to those who are corporate licensees. So having said that, there is another license. It's called the corporate license. Great. Let's quickly talk about the subscription fees. Natalie, are you back yet?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Right. Go right ahead.
Cool. So for the Prime license, there's an upfront fee once off of 49,500. All costs are exclusive of that. And then the Prime license has the monthly subscription fee, which is on we prefer that on a stop order, and it's an initial 5-year license, and that's 1,500 Rand per month. Starter license cost is 15,500 once off. And then we have the fast track, which includes just the basic and intermediary first aid, as well as the QCTO DIY workshop, and that's 11,890. And then you also have the option to purchase our training material individually at 2,995 each, but that amount is inclusive of that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I got that straight off the website. Okay, so that gives you an indication as to what you would be in for if you decide that you want to go this route of legal compliance training and or you want to get involved fully fledged in terms of occupational health and safety. When we run our orientation sessions, we talk about costings and we talk about profits and we talk about proceeds and we talk about things of that nature so that you know and understand where the money is to be made if this is something that you want to do as a commercial activity, or alternatively where the money is to be saved if you intend running it as a corporate. Okay, so having said that, so we said that there is a business model similar to a franchise. It's not a franchise, it's a license, and we'll take you through that process. We have a licensee orientation session, which is 1 day per month, and it's about 6 hours. Again, very, very useful. I hear it every single time. People go, wow, didn't know that. Then, of course, we've got the 2-day train the trainer. Those are the dates of the one in September that's coming up, and that's done online. Now, when we say train the trainer, remember, it's train the intra-trainer, and we'll be talking about these different aspects. You can put as many of your staff members in the session as in the orientation and in the train the trainer as you want. Our last session, we had one company, I think she had 8 people on the program with us. Absolutely acceptable. Then a very important part of it for those of you that are setting up a commercial operation is that you need to know and understand how to get seen in the marketplace. Natalie's going to talk you through in a moment, but that is critical. That's something that you'll never get on a normal train the trainer program, and I believe it's invaluable. Natalie?
So this service is included in the Prime license, the full Intra license, and we suggest a few very important platforms to be present on. So for a lot of our licensees, some of them don't yet have an online presence. So I do the setup of this for them, as well as provide you with a digital marketing pack where it gives you a whole bunch of resources of where to start with your digital marketing. I've also recorded a video which gives you an orientation of how best to utilize the platforms that I've suggested, as well as how to get going using some of the tools that I suggest that you get going with, like ChatGPT and Canva. So you get a whole load of information that you're able to really dive into, which can help get you going with your digital marketing and your presence online.
Natalie, thank you. Yep, I found that very, very interesting as I was starting to learn about social media and so forth. In fact, we have a workshop that's coming up shortly, specifically for our licensee on AI and how to use AI within the training environment. And I've already seen a snippet of it. It is absolutely fascinating. So yeah, that's all very, very important. Now, just to quickly put it into perspective, you may have a family member who's quite familiar with social media. However, why I'm going to say this is that if you want to do it properly. Quite simply, Natalie has a bachelor's degree from UCT in media. She's worked for a number of big agencies. She has probably set up 40 or 50 other intra licensees. So when it comes to health and safety, she knows what she's talking about. And you then have somebody that you can request assistance from. Natalie, you do not do websites. Am I correct in saying that?
No, this is just, unfortunately, Intra takes up all my time. So any of those other services that you need assistance with, we will refer you to some suggested suppliers.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Ness. Okay, let's move on. And the next thing I want to just quickly mention to you that we are in a situation where we set up our own e-learning platform at fairly substantial expense so that you don't have to, and you can piggyback on what we've got. And we'll explain to you how that works. And Natalie already mentioned that you can actually share the profit with us. So instead of you spending megabucks setting up the system, writing all the training material and things like that, it's in existence. You can actually go onto our website and have a look at it over there. And we say that this e-learning platform is a mechanism for you to generate income. However, if you're new to a specific topic, this is something that we say, let's make sure that you know what you're talking about. Okay. And when I say make sure you know what you're talking about, we've got compliance training material, and there's a host. You'll see them listed over here, the ACT track, the asbestos track, the claims track. These are not credit-bearing training programs. These are universal occupational health and safety legal compliance programs. And why they're not unit standards, we've got unit standard material, is that our client base stretches literally from Dubai to Durban. We are across the continent, and they have, it's not relevant in terms of legislation and certainly accreditation. So we've got these programs, construction regulations, dangerous goods, ELECTRAC, which is the introduction to electricity, EnviroTrack, which is environmental awareness, ErgoTrack, which is the ergonomics regulation, fall track, which is a basic working at heights program. We also have a fire track, a first track, a HAZREP. That's health and safety representative. Some people call it SHEREP. There's HAZChem, hazardous chemical substance. It's an IRA inductor. All of these programs are ready to run if you're familiar with the process, and we just talk you through it so that you understand how you can actually start running them. Then, of course, there's investigation and noise and supervisory skills. Remember the Section 8 said, form, instruct, train, and supervise. And we have got a program for that. So let me give you a quick example. We all know that it said every and all. Remember that? Every employee, all 16 million. So we developed a program, a video-based program called Inductor. And the Inductor has facilitator guides and learner guides. It has a 20-minute video. It is really, really good. It's an award-winning program that we developed. And you get to use it. And you can use this to generate income. You can use it from a promotional point of view. It's a stunning program. It really, really is good. And it was developed by a gentleman who was working on his PhD at the time together with me. Okay, then the question is, but am I allowed to do this training? The answer is yes, of course. Who says you can't? Of course you can. And am I allowed to issue certificates? Of course, yes. The only certificate we say do not issue, simply because of the big discussion that's going to come, is competence. But you can issue a certificate of attendance or participation or compliance. Nobody can stop you from doing that. In fact, if you look at the legislation, you can see it's exactly what it says in the legislation. The employer shall. How he does it, whether he or she does it themselves, or they get an agent such as yourself to come and do it, the employer shall. It's as simple as that. Now, moving on from there, we also have a lot of unit standard aligned training programs. And we have a catalog. Natalie will send that to you, and you can have a look at that. And there are something like 52 programs, 52 programs, apologies, that you can draw from. These are unit standard aligned programs. If you happen to be accredited for them, great. If you find yourself in a situation where you want to run the program, but you don't have accreditation, great, because nobody can stop you from running it. Remember that. It's just that you can't issue a certificate of competency. All right, more about that in our orientation sessions and so forth. Then to ask the question, is this unit standard that I intend running or that I have been running, is it still valid? Has it been extended? I'd like to suggest that you just literally grab your phone, take a photograph of that URL, the HTTPS up at the top there, and go and have a look and see if your unit standards have been extended. It also applies to QCTO qualification. Now, you can go onto the SACWA website and it will tell you yes, no, or maybe. And it'll tell you until when it's been extended. Now, unfortunately, there's been a lot of conversation backwards and forwards. And sure, you, like ourselves, have been confused with all the misinformation. So it's time for us to all to personally take the responsibility and make sure that we know what we're talking about, and then having a source where we can go to. Then, what about QCTO material? Well, I mentioned that QCTO has a thing called qualifications or part qualifications or skills programs. And we currently have these occupational health and safety programs which are ready to run. Unfortunately, you'll notice that the first 4 are long programs. And you can see by virtue of the amount of credits that's issued there and the notional hours. However, the bottom 3, 4 at least, that's basic emergency first aid responder, emergency intermediate, and advanced. These are short programs, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Now, that's all we've got at the moment. Hopefully, QCTO will hurry up and get some more out. We heard that there will be at least 12 that come out in the merry month of September. And they cover these topics. That's extracted directly off their document. And you'll see there's a health and safety rep program. There's a health and safety compliance insurer, whatever an insurer might be, strange term. And then there's evacuation controller. And then there's general emergency preparedness. And then there's incident investigation. And then there's risk assessment. So those are the programs that we hope to see within this month of September, which should be absolutely fantastic. As we speak, we're busy developing training material or extending our training material so it can then address these topics. More excitement. We'll tell you more about it as we go along. Then, of course, it comes to the QCTO. Now, Penny has not come back in, so I'm going to just quickly do this presentation, or this portion of the presentation. When it comes to the QCTO and accreditation, it's really important that you know and understand how this entire thing works. There are a number of documents on the QCTO website which are worthwhile downloading and reading. However, you can, if you wish to go this route, you can get what we've called the Accredi Kit, which is a comprehensive document of all the different forms and templates and videos and tutorials and everything that you would need, or shall I say 98% of everything you need, such as business plans and LIMSs and things of that nature. That is in the Accredi Pack. Penny takes you through the Accredi Pack in a workshop, and that workshop literally unpacks every single document. And we've got the next workshop that's coming up on the 18th. And if you'd like to join us, obviously as a licensee, you can do that. If you don't want to become a licensee, but you'd still like to attend this workshop, it is open to the public, and Natalie will be able to provide you with more information and take you to the website where you can actually book. Now, that makes it so much easier for you to manage your own accreditation. In the past, we would normally go, and we used to do this, you would normally go to an accreditation consultant or agent, and she or he would then assist you with your accreditation. But here's the problem, is that if she or he does it for you, what do you know about it? We left in the dark. We got accreditation. Somebody very graciously helped us. And I honestly, as the owner of the company, I had no idea how to go about getting accreditation. It's almost like having somebody do my taxes without me actually looking in to see whether that tax claim was appropriate, the deduction was appropriate. Now, we also see in the QCTO documentation that they don't prefer, they will work with consultants and agents, but they don't prefer to work with consultants and agents. They prefer to work with you. There's another very good reason why, is that in the past with SETA, you'd get your accreditation once and then you'd get an extension of scope. Now, they've got a similar mechanism with the QCTO, and the QCTO thing is that you can get your accreditation, and you can only get accreditation for 6 courses, by the way, first time round. Then every single additional course that you want to add on, you need new accreditation. And if you're using a consultant or an agent, they will charge you every single time. So we're suggesting that if you're empowered or your administrator is empowered, do it yourself. That's where the DIY workshop comes in. Okay, now, what do we do after that? We take you through the process, you get your accreditation, you start running, but we also feel that it's really important for you to stay abreast. I mentioned a couple of things, didn't want to embarrass you, but I said, have you read the ergonomics regulation? Have you read the children at work regulation? In fact, one of our colleagues is on the program at the moment. It's not specifically under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, but it's a piece of legislation called the SASRIA legislation or act, Sports and Environmental Recreation Regulation. So we know that there are 3 draft regulations. So either we or Saiosh, who we're members of, will take you through an introduction to these regulations and or legislation. We currently have a speaking arrangement with a number of people, including a former chief inspector and including 3 attorneys and 1 advocate, who will be lecturing for us, to us, for and on behalf of our licensees. Now, you don't pay for that if you're a prime licensee. It's all part of it. And you don't pay for your colleagues to attend this. That webinar training and support stuff we do for you literally because you pay your monthly license fee. Okay. Then, as I start wrapping up, something that's really important, of course, is that I mentioned to you that we operate from Cape Town to Cairo, or we from Dubai to Durbanville, and you will find that there are wonderful networking opportunities. An example that we used the other day was somebody who was talking about, I need somebody, one of our licensees was saying, I need somebody to come and do a Working at Heights program. And I said, fine. We've got communication channels such as WhatsApp broadcast groups and Facebook pages, private pages, and let's put it out there for you. So-and-so needs Working at Heights training for 16 people in wherever, Pietermaritzburg. Which of the licensees can help? And that's exactly what happened. 3 or 4 people responded, and the licensee selected one of them to collaborate with them. Now, that means the licensee, doesn't have to get accreditation yet. They can if they want to at some other stage, but they can work, they don't lose the business, and the business is still theirs, and it's invoiced under their name, and the certificate goes out with a co-branding. So all of these things with MOUs and SLAs have all been put in place, and you can work with us on that. So as you can see, it's a business model. It addresses the issue of legal compliance training. It addresses this whole thing of What are we going to do with SETA, NQF, QCTO, and so forth in the meantime? It does not take away the focus from the fact that we're saying that you should probably, as a business owner, probably get your own accreditation as soon as possible. It makes sense to get your accreditation. And if you're interested in what we've been saying, I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to just finish off with a quick request to Natalie just to wrap up here, and then we're going to take questions and answers. So Natalie, would you like to, we've got a couple of minutes, got 3 minutes, and you could just wrap up for us, please.
Thanks. Yeah, so I've dropped the details to where you can request a quote on our website. Alternatively, if you are watching the recording, you're welcome to just WhatsApp me directly on the number on the screen, and then I'll get back to you shortly. But if you need the prospectus or the catalog, you can just go to that request a quote form, drop your details, and you'll receive an automated mail. Please make sure just to check your spam or your junk folder, and be sure to mark our email as safe so that you can receive future communication. And if there's anything else that you need, you're welcome to reach out and we will get back to you soonest. Thanks so much.
Right. Unfortunately, we didn't have Penny on the show. Almost like a radio station. I used to be on radio down in Cape Town some years ago. But she is one of the strong portions of this team where she provides insight and wisdom and guidance and counseling. I shouldn't maybe use the word counseling. It sounds like she's a psychologist. She's available to guide you. There are so many aspects which you're going to encounter as a business owner, and Penny will be able to assist you. Our team extends. I haven't got all the names or made reference to all the people that are on our team. We have a number of other people. We actually have somebody who's flying to London right now, and I'm sure she's going to enjoy herself enormously. I'm not sure what the weather's like over there. But we have people that are developing training material for us. There are people that are ISO specialists. We have people that have a business and support system in terms of the LMIS. We have people that assist with digitized certificates, and there's just so much more that I can add to it, and I don't want to. So I just want to say at this stage, it's almost time. I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to switch off the recording, and then we'll take questions from all and sundry. So thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for your participation. And to those that are watching the video, we look forward to chatting to you. Natalie, you want to just quickly talk about how to get a one-on-one session with myself and Penny?
Yes, sure. So best way to do that is to just send me a WhatsApp, and then we can discuss an available time that would suit both sides. So you can just email me or WhatsApp me, and we can arrange that easily. Thanks.
Fantastic. And we do this all the time. So we'd feel really happy. Last week, Natalie arranged a meeting where it was a couple of people from one company. It wasn't just one individual. So it was probably the C-suite, and they came along and they asked questions. And now it is important to note this, that because the legislation is constantly changing, you and I need to be abreast of what's happening from an occupational health and safety. What can we do? Where can we go for advice and guidance? And I'm hoping that some of the speakers that will come along, they will become your connections as well. And you will then be able to reach out to them as well, such as I mentioned the former chief inspector. We're just going to wrap that up and get in writing and a date and time and place. For those of you that want to join us with the AI session, you can let Natalie know as well. But particularly, even if you're not a health and safety person and you don't specifically want QCTO accreditation for health and safety, but something else, contact Natalie. She'll send you some information. She's actually sending out some information today as well. Okay, so that's from me to you. Thank you so much. Let me stop the recording, and then we can just open the microphone.